Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for responding so anxiously to the invitation. And I'm happy to be with you here in Dominica and also, well, happy to be with you and also happy to be in Dominica this afternoon to give you the results of the most recent CADRES public opinion poll, political opinion poll that was conducted in Dominica. Just a bit of background, the poll was conducted between the 17th and the 20th of October 2014. My assumption is that the media fraternity in Dominica is sufficiently familiar with the organization Caribbean Development Research Services and also our methods and our reputation since this is our third election in working in Dominica. So I imagine that there should be some familiarity with how we do business and the type of information that we put out. So the methodology that was used was very similar to all previous exercises that we did in Dominica. The margin of error that we estimate is plus or minus 5%. Again, the members of the media are familiar with that type of estimation because we've done this type of thing before. One of the most significant observations in this last public opinion poll is the national swing. National swing is a figure that is generated by CADRES. It's an estimation based on the change in party support between the last election and this election. Of course, we estimate this election, the last election, is a matter of public record. What we're seeing is that at this time there has been a swing of minus 2 percentage points away from the Dominican Labour Party and a swing of 4 percentage points towards the United Workers' Party. This variation between the two projections is the result simply of the fact that the swing estimation that we use relies on historical data. And the history of Dominica, of course, includes the Dominica Freedom Party that would have accounted for 2 or 3 percentage points in the last election. Since we've taken that figure out, because they're not a factor in this election, that's the reason why you're seeing more swing towards the UWP than you're seeing away from the Dominica Labour Party. So we're looking at a 2 percentage point swing away from the Dominican Labour Party and a 4 percentage point swing towards the United Workers' Party. Just let me put that in context for you. I don't know if you are aware of this, but Dominica is somewhat peculiar in that in most Caribbean islands, what happens is that after political parties win elections and form a government, the next electoral excursion, there's actually a reduction in party support, so you will see a negative swing. What has happened in Dominica over the last 2 elections is that the Dominican Labour Party has actually increased its support on each occasion it went to the elections, which is quite frankly something that has not happened anywhere else in the Caribbean in recent times. It's a significant development. It would appear as though that on this current trajectory, that increase has been arrested. I would tell you that I would have been a bit surprised if it had continued to increase, because already the fact that it has increased on 3 occasions is significant and has created electoral history in the Caribbean. So it would appear as though, at least at this point in time, that has been arrested. What does that mean in terms of seats? We're estimating that this election will be fought in basically four seats that are the battleground for the Dominican Labour Party. These are seats that the Dominican Labour Party currently holds. So they will fight to hold on to Roseau North, Wesley, La Plaine, Montjean, and Roseau Central, which is a UWP seat. We imagine that the UWP will fight to hold on to that one, and that would be the most logical seat that the Dominican Labour Party would be able to grow their support in. With a swing projection of minus 2 percentage points, it can go either way, in the sense that you could have, within that margin of error, you can have actual growth of the Dominican Labour Party for a 4th time, or alternatively, you can have a deterioration further of UWP's fortunes that takes it to more than 2 percentage points, because that's the way that the swing estimation goes. You have a margin of error in there. I would say that on a best case scenario for the Dominican Labour Party, it would be able to hold on to all 4 seats and gain an additional seat, which would be Roseau Central. A worst case scenario for the Dominican Labour Party would be looking at losing those 4 seats. And a best case scenario for the UWP, of course, would be to hold on to Roseau Central and also to be able to gain the other 4. So that's the situation with projections. As far as actual party support is concerned, what we found was that 43% of respondents indicated that they will vote for the Dominican Labour Party, while 30% promised to support the UWP. 13% of respondents said they were unsure which party they would support, and 14% refused to tell us who they will vote for. This is, of course, a situation where people say, we know who we will vote for, but we just won't tell you. That's entirely normal in this type of exercise. The Dominican Freedom Party maintains at this time 0.4% support. These are people who identify themselves as Dominican Freedom Party supporters. Needless to say, they're not fielding any candidates, so this level of support is not really relevant. A couple more things I wanted to mention in the press release. The issues of concern to Dominicans, that was one of the things that we asked in the survey. The single largest number of people said that employment was their main concern, 31%. 22% were concerned about the cost of living, and 16% were concerned about the economy. I thought it was significant because if you follow social media and other sources of news and information from Dominica, there are always suggestions that a big issue of concern is corruption. In our survey, we found that corruption was a concern for 2% of people in Dominica, suggesting that it does not figure on particularly significantly in terms of the scheme of things. We also use a gauge, which is normal, where we ask people, do you think the country is on the right track or heading in the right direction? And in this regard, 42% of people said they believe the country was on the right track, while 38% of people said the country was heading in the wrong direction. I found it significant that if we compare the number of people who said the country was on the wrong track with the quantity of people who supported the UWP, we have a deficit of 8%, suggesting that there are Dominicans who feel the country is on the wrong track but are not yet prepared to support the UWP. And then finally, on the issue of leadership, there were two measures which we included and are presented in the press release. One where we asked people to rate the leaders on a scale ranging from 1 to 10. This is, of course, seen as being a fair measure where we ask people, all people, regardless of political opinion, to respond to the preferred leader or respond to each leader and give each leader a rating or a score, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best. And then we can disaggregate the data accordingly. What we found was that on average, Dominicans gave Prime Minister Skerrit a score of 6.4, while opposition leader Lennox Linton was given a score of 4.7. And I appreciate that it is somewhat different work for the opposition leader compared to the Prime Minister, but at the same time, those are the way that Dominicans have perceived them. Out of interest, we disaggregated the views of the uncertain voters, since the uncertain voters, and this is a term that we also use, and if those of you who are familiar with previous polls that we have done will be familiar with this term, uncertain voters. It's a catch-all that holds the unsures, the won't-says, are the ones that said and are not voting. And we often, in polls, we disaggregate those opinions because that is a useful indicator of non-aligned support. And what we found was that among those persons, the Prime Minister Skerrit got an average of 5.7 and Mr. Lennox Linton an average of 4.3. Generally speaking, the uncertain voters are a lot less enthusiastic in terms of giving high scores, and it was consistent in that regard. The final question which we would report on is the question of the preference for choice of leader. It's an open-ended question. We asked people which persons they would prefer to have them, would prefer to be led by. We found that 63% of Dominicans expressed a preference for Prime Minister Skerrit, while 37% expressed a preference for Mr. Lennox Linton. And here also, the uncertain voters were disaggregated. 69% of them, which is even higher than the committed voters, preferred Prime Minister Skerrit. 31% opted for Mr. Lennox Linton. And those data are included in the press release. We've given the tables. I should also point out that a poll is always a snapshot in time. This poll speaks to a week ago. The election has not been announced, although I think everyone assumes that it will be announced in a matter of days, if not weeks. Certainly can't be months, because those months would take us into the constitutional period. And when that happens, the situation could change. We can discuss whether or not I think it will change, but it could change. But the contemporary scenario is reflected in this public opinion poll, and it is entirely possible that we will do another public opinion poll depending on how long it takes for the election to come around, and we could modify this opinion at that time. So that's it for me, and I'm happy to take any questions or queries that you may want to raise.